Do you need a trust? Do you even know what a trust is? Well, if you have questions about trusts, then you should absolutely listen to this video. Attorney Joseph Marra is so kind to explain this very complicated topic.
You know who your children are, right? You have a good relationship with them and your spouse. There's no one suffering from a disability. You don't have estate tax issues. You only have property and assets in New York State. Normally, I would say, you really don't need a trust. Why bother? Because people think that if you do a trust, if you write a trust, that's good enough. It's not. You then have to take the assets and convey title to the trust. So it's like this glass, right? I have ice and water in the glass. Think of them as the assets. If the glass is empty, it's useless. I've had people come into me, oh, Dad did a trust. Okay, let me see it. So what assets did Dad put in the trust? I get a blank stare. Well, just doing the trust is not good enough. If they didn't put assets in the trust is absolutely useless. Now, as I said before, if you had all these proper things, you had no minor children, you had no disabled children, everybody got along, the spouses got along, the kids got along, there was no state tax issues, you had no assets out of your estate. The will was drafted properly, right? Properly drafted and witnessed properly. And there was an affidavit of the witnesses attached to the will. That's a long checklist, right? But assuming all those things were met, you didn't need a trust. Now, I don't feel that way anymore, and I'll tell you why. Before this whole COVID-19 pandemic, the surrogates courts in the New York metro area were getting very backed up. I mean, I remember like 5 years ago, I had a person with a relatively simple will, similar to what I discussed, properly drafted. Of course it was, I drafted it, properly witnessed, done right, no problems, put the will in for probate, letters testamentary, which you remember allow the executor to gather the assets and distribute them, literally issued in a week. Now, same circumstance, could take months. Things kind of get lost. The clerks are backed up. Now, the court system was in essence shut down during the COVID crisis for months. So you already had a situation where the courts were backed up before COVID even hit. Now you have things backing up even further. So before, I would say, don't worry about it. If you hit all the criteria, you don't need a trust. Now, I don't know about that. I think most people should seriously consider a trust. Why people don't do a trust is, number one, the expense of it, and number two, they have to really transfer all their assets to the trust. You have bank accounts, they have to now go in the name of the trust. You have real estate, you have to transfer it to the trust. Stock, transfer it to the trust. It's a lot of work. But once you do it, everything's the same as it was before. But the problem is doing it. And a lot of people don't do it. Now, there are certain times when you absolutely need a trust. And let's examine that a little bit. If you remember, I told you if you don't have a will, New York State writes a will for you. Okay? And a lot of people, I try to explain that to people and they say, well, that's why I'm here. I'm here to do a will. Who cares what New York State does for you? Well, you might care. I'll give you a perfect example why. Let's say you're single, no children. Let's say you came to the United States from another country and most of your relatives are back there. Guess what? Your first cousins, let's say you have first cousins. They're going to be your heirs. You had no siblings, no nieces and nephews. The only thing you have is first cousins. If you had no will, they would get your money. So a client says to me, well, that's why I'm here. I'm writing a will. I don't want them to get them. I don't even know who these people are. What are you talking about? You can do whatever you want. You can leave whoever you want your money to in your will. Unfortunately, the people who would get your money, if you had no will, have to be notified. And then, well, I don't even know who they are. Well, guess what? If you do a will and if you have assets through probate, well, those people are going to have to get notified. And I had one client say to me, you know what? I don't care, because anybody who's getting money from me is getting a bonus. And I'm not going through this expense and aggravation of changing around all my assets. So when I die, let them deal with it, which is perfectly rational if that's what you want to do. And actually, it was great for me. It's very interesting because I had this woman, she came here from Italy when she was a very young child. And all her first cousins, most of them were back in Italy. So what did I have to do in order to probate her estate? I had to hire a genealogist. I had to fly people in from Italy to testify to her family tree. I mean, she had maybe at that point a $700,000 estate, and over $250,000 of it went to legal fees, court costs, expert fees, research fees. So it was a wonderful experience educationally for me, not so much so for the heirs who eventually got the money. But these are the type of things that can happen. And like I said, you have to just know, make the choice consciously. Another situation where you really should have a trust is if you have properties in more than one state, particularly if you have properties in a state where the probate process is onerous. For example, 2 states where the probate process is pretty onerous are California and Florida. Now, a lot of people here in the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, have second homes in Florida. They really should, if for nothing else, do a trust and if they intend on keeping that property for any length of time, put the house into the trust to avoid the Florida probate process. Another thing people don't realize, Florida found a way to make a little money for themselves. You can have by the way, how this would work is you have a will, it's probated in New York because if you're a New York resident, right? Then you have to apply for what's called ancillary probate in that other state. And guess what? Even though you name your executor in New York, Florida requires that a Florida executor be also named. So the court will assign someone who's going to get a commission. So that's another reason to avoid probate in multiple states. If you have property in more than one state, you really should have a trust, if for nothing else, to put the property in that trust. So today, should you have a trust? I would say more so than ever before. Before I would have said, if it's an easy probate, don't bother. Now I'll tell you, because of the backup in the courts that was going on before COVID, and now that's just been exacerbated by COVID, you really should seriously consider a trust and/or putting other people's names on some or all of the assets.
Thank you so much, Joe, for that important information. And thank you, audience, for watching. If you yourself or someone you know may have questions on this topic, please don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call the law offices of Joseph Marra. They are professional, friendly, and really great at looking at the pros and cons of your situation, coming up with a fantastic strategy, and giving you some options. We look forward to hearing from you soon.